Hi, everyone. It's David Ault, and I want to welcome you to The Gathering. Traveling again. This time I'm in Vero Beach, Florida, where I will be speaking at a spiritual center tomorrow. And one of the things that has been on my mind and my heart of late is an observation around wisdom. There has been a beautiful collective of young people involved in a lot of the activities that I have been engaged in over the past month. A lot of them have been through Ram Dass meetup groups and through a retreat that we just hosted at our home in Atlanta. And one of the incredible things that I have witnessed within these young people, or people who are younger than me, is a lot of wisdom. And I wanted to kind of look at this idea of wisdom. It made me reflect on a time when I was the senior minister at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta. For about a 2.5 year span, there was this organic coming together of young people. Um, I will say this, I don't feel as though I had anything to do with them coming. Somehow they were there and they connected and they self organized. And I saw wisdom within them. And I wanted to champion that. And I gave them space. By space, I mean that I gave them opportunities to lead and speak on Sundays. I would give them the opportunity to go and scout and bring in local musicians, particularly during the season for peace and nonviolence. I gave them a lot of time and space to share their brand of wisdom. And a beautiful thing happened because they had that space and because they felt seen and heard by the community. They began to organically grow. And like I said, they self organized. So not only were they ministering and offering their brand of wisdom to the local community at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta, but they were branching out and they were producing festivals and all other kinds of service organizations. It caught the attention of the larger movement, and I remember getting phone calls and being interviewed by the magazine because people were curious as to how I or how we did that. I didn't really have a concrete answer for them because I didn't feel like I had done anything other than to recognize their wisdom, to champion their wisdom, to give space to that. And what came from that was a lot of dialogue, a lot of observation from other churches, from other organizations and places, and it still continues to this day where there is a reaching for, a desire for bringing in young people. You will hear it in all kinds of planning meetings. And I think that the approach is a little skewed because one of the things that I did learn from the collective of these wise minds is the fact that they can smell when they're being manipulated. They can sense when they are being used for something other than just pure recognition. And these conversations even happened at our retreat when we were talking, and they were telling me their experiences of always feeling as though they're being recruited for something. Interesting. Something happened with this group in Atlanta, these young people. It fulfilled its purpose. In other words, after that 2.5 year stint, they went out into their respective lives. They moved. Some people moved to Europe. Some people got married. Some people did all kinds of things within their creative expression, which is naturally what they should do. And the feedback, the comments from those in the congregation were interesting. They were like, how can we get them to stay? And therein is the curious piece to examine. Wisdom to me is different than knowledge. Wisdom to me is different than knowledge. Wisdom exists. Sometimes we say that wisdom comes by age. And you've heard me say in this format oftentimes that that may be true, but I've met a lot of wise young people. Wisdom isn't necessarily confined to age, but it is associated with an opening, a permission opening within the self and in the environment. And the wisdom that you have has perhaps come through experience. It can come through observation, but it is different than knowledge. And so on this trip in Vero Beach, I'm with my partner, and we were reading some of Ram Dass's material. He has this great book called Still Here. And what is so beautiful about it is it's him being very open about his challenges with aging. And if you are familiar with his teaching and his life, you know that many of those final years, the cycle of his teaching in those final years was all about addressing and looking at this thing called aging, which seems to be connected to a lot of our suffering. When we think about all of the things that we try to halt or stop or that we have difficulty accepting, one of those things is aging. One of the reasons why this book made it into the backpack is because I've been looking at my own feelings about that as well. And so we started to read this, and it started to blend beautifully with this awareness of the young people and the wisdom. And this particular quote caught my attention. He says in the very beginning of the prologue of this book, he says, "Don't be a wise elder. Be an incarnation for wisdom." We sat on the beach going back and forth trying to go, what does that mean? Don't be a wise elder. Be an incarnation for wisdom. The best that I have come up with so far, because this is sort of fresh on my mind and heart, is that a lot of times we categorize a wise elder as someone who's very knowledgeable. Yes, there is a lot of experience, but that knowledge, that sort of professorial stature, is something to be revered. And yet, when you think about that energetically, some kind of professorial wise elder, that can, interestingly enough, become very static. So only the wise elder can speak. So we are compartmentalizing or containing wisdom to age, to the elder. And Ram Dass said, don't focus on that. Be an incarnation for wisdom. So to be an incarnation for wisdom is wide open. There's no static nature to that. It's almost as if it's a perpetual birthing station of willingness. And I think that the only thing that I did that was really right on with those groups of young people at Spiritual Living Center of Atlanta was to recognize the birthing that was going on with them, to recognize the hunger. One in particular would come and he would sit on the front row and he would take copious notes and he would stay after and he would ask questions. There was a natural curiosity about the spiritual principles, and it was just so wonderful to watch. I didn't necessarily see that particular curiosity in people who were older. A lot of them used that environment as a social setting. Again, nothing wrong with that. But there was something unique. And so, things like that, things that are exemplifying wisdom, no matter what kind of framework of age that they're coming through, deserve to be heralded, that they deserve to be noticed, and they deserve to be listened to. So don't be a wise elder in terms of waiting with this wisdom, but be an incarnation for wisdom. Be an incarnation for wisdom, wisdom then as a verb, meaning be an incarnation where we are looking for the application and the welcoming of wisdom in all forms. So then there's a difference between knowledge and wisdom, something that could be static, because we know lots of people who walk around who are knowledgeable, but are they wise? So some of the steps that are encouraged by Ram Dass in order to become more familiar with wisdom, and these are going to be applicable to you. I know that you're going to find something here. One is wisdom involves. the emptying and the quieting of the mind. The emptying and the quieting of the mind. I want you to think about that. People who are knowledgeable, people who might be in leadership who are knowledgeable, where does the knowledge come from? Where is the kernel of that knowledge being massaged? Is it being massaged in the bulk of thought? Because if it is, it has around it a layering, a casing, a frequency, or an energy of opinion, wisdom, which is much more free, much more indigenous, much more primordial with regards to the truth of who we are, is derived from, or I would say that it's revealed because it's already there, but it's revealed through the emptying and the quieting of the mind. And those are the types of discussions, and those are the types of things that happen, of course, with meditation, but also in gravitating to text and things that give us instructions and reminders that we are not our thoughts. We are not our thoughts. What is behind the thinking mind? What are the ways in which we can become just the witness of the thought, but not identify with the thought? That's wisdom. And as much as you may have heard that before, as much as you may have read books like The Untethered Soul that are solely focused on this, it takes practice, because we can be well into our elder years, but we can be completely consumed in the knowledge of our opinion rather than operating wisely. It is wisdom that halts us in our identities. It is wisdom that tickles the curiosity within us to begin to let go of story, to let go of all of the blockages that have defined us up until this moment. And what's interesting with some of these young people is I see that they have arrived at that wisdom much quicker than I did. Much quicker than I did. Their curiosity and my curiosity, even though they are the same, they are highlighting themselves on the spectrum at different age points. And that's something to champion. The other thing, besides emptying and quieting the mind, is that wisdom is fertilized through the application of the heart. The application of the heart, to lead from the heart instead of the mind, the container of knowledge. Oftentimes we overthink. Oftentimes in that overthinking, there is a fierce amount of control. A lot of times that control goes way, way back and has its roots in our adolescence, where we were in the midst of some form of familial chaos. And it's true. All of us who were brought up in a particular expression of chaos, we have control issues, because what we're trying to do is manage the chaos that is now in our more elder years. Naturally so. Wisdom is knowing from the application of the heart that I no longer have to be identified with that the heart can lead instead of my mind. My mind's going to tell me to control. My heart is going to let me be spacious enough to experiment in letting go of that control. The application of the heart. The application of the heart beams when we are emptying and quieting the mind. We can revisit the compassionate nature, the creative expression, the uniqueness of our karma yoga in the world. We can begin to consider that perhaps all that was knowledgeable and felt necessary in order to do a particular thing, all of the static nature that tells us that our good can only come from this way, can finally be softened and quieted long enough for the application of the heart to say, what about this? What about allowing your creativity to leave? What about letting something that is often called bravery or courage take us by the hand instead of us trying to drag it along. Application of the heart lends itself more to the lens of we in the world. I'm not so much focused about me. I'm focused about we. And I want to tell you something. In this day and age, when there is so much noise about science and about health and about vaccines and all of the things that have become so ridiculously politicized, we forget and we begin to take language and we begin to bastardize it in a way that is not really wise. So, for example, the word sovereignty. I cringe sometimes when I hear people claiming their personal sovereignty, their me sovereignty with regards to making particular decisions about the me. But sovereignty, if you really want to be wise about it, if you really want to be spacious about it, sovereignty in its we nature, in its humanity nature, is about creating a sovereign atmosphere where everyone can feel empowered, where everyone can feel that they are being seen, heard, and valued, where the collective's good is put forth more than the subset colonialism that is only deriving that good for a particularized group. And so instead of perhaps referring to our sovereign nature, think of our as the collective we, the sovereignty of all humankind. And it doesn't take much to really see that when you look at everything that is being presented, that there are choices that we make that are not just about us, but about the collective we. That is the application of the heart. That is the application of the heart. Otherwise, I am choosing out of fear. I am choosing out of preservation. And that is based upon knowledge that isn't perhaps even true. Yes, even there's such a thing as faulty knowledge. The paradox and the irony is all around us. And lastly, wisdom is interestingly put by Ram Dass, is the alchemy of our reasoning and our feeling. Our reasoning and our feeling. Wisdom, the alchemy of our reasoning and our feeling. So alchemy, when you think about the definition of that, is about taking something dense and transforming it into something priceless. So often in the stories, alchemy is associated with turning lead into gold. So if there is something that is laden, lead bearing within our lives, we have the ability to take the gift of our reasoning and our feeling and create alchemy with that thing that is heavy and bring something priceless and precious to it. When I think about how do we do that, when I think about the application of wisdom in that regard, it really is fueled by a wonderful question, which is, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? For you see, there is a lot of unconsciousness in the world. It's a part of the curriculum. It's a part of the human experience. It is a part of the principle of polarity, that for the light there is the dark. And these attributes not only are in the laws of nature, but they are in the laws of our humanity as well. So there are people who are exhibiting the light on the spectrum, and there are people who are exhibiting the dark on the spectrum. And so if that's the case, if that's neither good nor bad, but that's just a principle, and this is something that is an eternal part of this curriculum for being human, then the way that we bring alchemy of reasoning and feeling isn't about throwing our hands up in despair and saying, what does it matter? That polarity is always going to exist. The dark is always going to be there. But it is asking this question, what is mine to do? What is mine to do from the point of wisdom? the incarnation of wisdom. I would love to bet on you that you are in a phase or in a stage of your incarnation of wisdom. That you're not waiting for some kind of elder knowledgeability to lead the way and make you feel valid or make you feel relevant, but that you understand that every single moment of self-awareness that builds upon itself is revealing and peeling away the fact that this incarnation, yes, it did something. It touched the hem of the garment of wisdom. And not only did it touch the hem of the garment of wisdom, it tried the garment on. And not only did it try the garment on, it's wearing it. And we are walking around and we are beaming that particular vibration of wisdom. I would like to think that all of us are out there in some form or fashion in that process. And so in that process, continue to ask the question of yourself, of your incarnation, what is mine to do? What is mine to do? What is mine to do then in terms of that which looks static? What is mine to do then in the misrepresentation of the understanding of sovereignty? What is mine to do within my own self-view? How can I become more compassionate about me? How can I allow myself to direct that love in such a way that I wouldn't dream of committing thought crimes against myself, even as I age, even as I become older? That's one of the things that I'm learning about wisdom, is that there is an inevitability to aging. There is an inevitability to change. And like it or not, it's a part of the curriculum. And so how can I not lose sight of the wisdom within that? And how can I celebrate it rather than trying to get knowledgeable about all of the ways that I can halt it, prevent it, anti this, but that I can embrace it and love it as a part of my wise incarnation. So wherever you are, if you are willing to sit with this distinction between knowledge and wisdom, if you are willing, wherever you are, to think about wisdom is not something acquired, it's not outside of us, it is something that is there. And then as you begin to consider the steps that Ram Dass gave us, that wisdom involves the emptying and the quieting of the mind. I'm not my thoughts. Wisdom involves the application of the heart. How can I make this thing called sovereignty more about the we than just the me? And then the alchemy of reasoning and feeling. Discerning what is mine to do. What is mine to do in the world with regards to helping alleviate the suffering of our forgetfulness? What is mine to do in the basic task day to day of feeding people, of loving people, of helping them remember the truth that God is all that there is? How can I do that without proselytizing from a platform of knowledge, and do it from a platform and from an embodiment and from an action and a being state of wisdom? And then we do that, then we get to stand back and view the whole world. We get to discern daily what matters and what does not. Do you know that can change from day to day? Our incarnating wisdom can allow us to soften a little bit about the attachments that we have and discern what matters and what does not. And then begin to weigh the meaning and the depth of things. To weigh the meaning and the depth of things. Which is, I like to think, and something that I've been refocused on lately, the cultivation of deep roots. It's a little tricky the way that I say it. It's probably not that accurate. Cultivation of deep roots. Because the deeper roots are there. It is perhaps the nurturing and the remineralizing the soil of the deep roots so that we can remember our roots rather than always bending from the surface. I think knowledge is only existing on the surface, but wisdom has the deep roots. Which would you like to operate from this day? Which would you like to celebrate more of? I'm going to champion you. I'm going to encourage you to look at yourself as an incarnation for wisdom and to go through these three things and begin to apply them more and more, to be on the lookout to see how you can nurture and foster that in other people. And together we can continue to reveal a world that works for everyone. Blessings.